Go. Ish. Hello, and welcome to our show, the RO show. I'm going to try not to eat during the show today. There's pizza next to me, though, so I might indulge along the way. Welcome to the show. Today, I wanted to talk about joy and ecstasy, and the ways of finding and maintaining joy in your life as a magician. I think it's important to, we've been talking about, so like I spent the summer going over all the 7 spheres and all the courses and conjuration classes and all the stuff that I present on how to do the great work, how to achieve the great work, how to conjure spirits, how to acquire wealth and prosperity, health, how to overcome your titans in your life, how to develop all the things you need to kind of put your life together and set yourself up to, enjoy yourself. But then the thing is like, so like, if you're like me, it's hard to shift gears, right? To remember exactly what it is. Like once you start getting everything going your way, you kind of like, if you're used to crisis management, like I am, it's hard to kind of remember what to do when you're not in a crisis. So anyway, it's just one of those things. Before I go too much further, Adam, I'm glad you're here. I'd like to. I'm not ready. I don't know. I haven't talked to Adam enough yet about this, but Adam and I have been in talks offline about doing a show together on his awesome hag thing. I was going to send him a preview of my ideas for what we would talk about and stuff, but I think we've gone over the outline. But anyway, I'd like to make the announcement that Adam Conjure and I and his partner, who also helped make the hag heads, are going to be doing a show together to do to talk about the way spirit pots work and familiars, the types of familiars that he creates and sells through Devil's Conjure, and but specifically the Hag's Head stuff that he just released. I've been looking forward to that. It's based on the art history of it is really cool, and the actual applications of it I want to talk about, because it's spirit pot magic. It's like vessel magic, and that's not the kind of thing that a lot of people. It's one of the most convenient ways of doing magic that I know of, and it would be really cool to have him on and talk about that, I think. So I'm looking forward to doing that. So Adam, I'm glad you popped on. I totally am outing us as planning to do that. We haven't made a firm date yet for that. Hopefully, I was thinking like maybe next week or the week after, whenever works for Adam. We will see how that works out. Let's see what else is going on. The 20th, not Sunday, but Saturday. So Adam and I will probably be on a Sunday show. But on Saturday coming up, we're going to be doing the Rebel Orphan class. It is free to people who are at the Rebel Orphan level on my membership thing on the YouTube channels. If you want to do it and you don't want to be on a subscription plan, I totally get that. I have come to loathe subscriptions, but it is the world that we live in. So, but if you don't want to do subscriptions, I get it. You're welcome to join. I'm going to set up a product that I haven't set up yet on my website, and you can hop over and purchase that. I haven't got it ready, of course, but I'll try to get that ready over the next week or so. If you follow me on Facebook, that's where I will probably be announcing it. What else is going on? That's really it for like stuff that's going on. I don't have a lot going on these days because things have worked out really well. My magic has been successful, and I'm enjoying my life, and I'm kind of coasting. And like I didn't realize it, but I've been sort of hanging on for dear life for a while now, because it's just it's just how it's my default mode. We had a long graceful period of enjoying living off the bounty of some money that we had, and then things got a little bit tight, and then things got a little bit scary, and then we ended up landing on our feet, and we're back into coasting again, and it's like the tides, the ebbs and the tides of prosperity and fortune, and in the world of being a magician, it's kind of weird sometimes, but yeah, the thing of it is, right? So a long time ago, I wanted to talk about, I don't think I have it up. Hang on just a second. Pull up here. I'll show you what I'm working on, so you can follow along at home. You don't think I'm just like talking out loud to myself here. All right. I wonder why it's not showing the window. That's weird. Nope. That is not right. Don't you love it when things go wrong, like live while you're doing stuff? Here we go. Sorry, restart capture. There we go. Okay. Haha. All right. Yes, that's much better. Okay, so what was I looking for? That was going to be 777 on Hermetic.com. Okay, so I want to talk about the word of the Magus is what I called this. The word of the Magus was Kara, joy. When I was doing my initiation, so over the summer we were talking about the whole seven sphere stuff, and I've talked about my classes and everything, and the process of initiation and what it means to become a magician, and I've talked a lot about wealth magic and love magic and overcoming your financial difficulties and finding prosperity and overcoming your any kind of relationship issues that you have that are keeping you from being in a good love life. And basically because like in Maslow's pyramid, my understanding of it, the things that people want most in life after serving, the community as a cultist for hire for years, what people hire you for is for wealth and love problems, right? So that's like the main things people use magic for. So I have focused so much of my teachings on taking care of people's financial stuff and love life, because once those things are clear, I feel like then you can focus on doing the great work, and the great work is the process of transformation that is fulfilling to people who are called to this kind of thing, because once you've until you've met your needs financially with magic repeatedly, you don't really appreciate how easy it is to make money with magic until you've done it enough times to see it be successful and get a little bit of confidence. And then at that point, you don't really you realize you don't really give a shit about money as much as you used to, and it becomes less important. And then you're free from that particular burden, right? And the burden of being enslaved to the idea that wealth is your liberty. Wealth is not liberty. Liberty is liberty. Freedom is freedom. Power is what you want. Often what people want is power when they say they want money and wealth. It's not really wealth. They just want to be free to do what they want. And one of the things that you learn with magic is that you're free to do what you want, and you're powerful enough to make things happen in a way that you don't have to do what other people tell you to do all the time. And you already can do it without having all these, like we have these excuses for not doing things that are pretty much, in my opinion, why we don't do things, let me see, I'm trying to find 777. I could go by the numbers here. How about that? The books, scholarship, suggestions. So maybe it's technical levers. They used to have a thing that was Libras by number. The reason I'm even bringing this up, here we go, is because in 777 there's a column that talks about, here it is. Oh my goodness, such a long ass name. Oh, look at that, a wonderful ad. Here we go, all on one page. Okay. All right, so somewhere in here, there is a column that talks about the layers of the initiate that they go through as they go through the different spheres. Here's Joy, by the way. Joy falls on path 2, which would be the sphere 2, which is, let's see, Kether is 0, 1 was Hokmah, so 2 would be, I don't know. God damn it, why am I having a hard time with this? Anyway, I'm not going to get into all that. But sorry, this is taking so long. The point is like as you go through this process that I've been talking about over the summer, you go through these initiations. As you go through these initiations into the different spheres, you go up through the spheres, and here on this the spheres of Crowley's Golden Dawn derived AA curriculum stuff. It talks about what to expect within our, I want to say Western mystery tradition, but I know that's not the right term. But within the European derived mystery traditions of occultism, it talks about how as you go through these initiations, if you have any kind of ceremonial background, you'll understand that as you go through these initiations, you receive a vision along the way. So like in the 10th sphere, you get this vision of the Holy Guardian Angel. 9th sphere, you get a vision of the machinery of the universe, all this stuff. And as you have these visions, as you go through these initiations, you integrate these visions, you understand the universe in a different way, and you approach it differently. And then, shoot. Yeah, I think I missed it. Let me see. Is that even on here? No. I don't think I can search on this. I think it's all pictures anyway. Yeah, they're images anyway. God damn it. Fuck. Heck. I know it's in here somewhere. I know I passed it earlier because I was talking. God, I even have like a extract of it somewhere. Anyway, damn it. Oh, it's going to bother me to no end. Is it further down? Holy crap. Yeah, I don't know where it is anymore. Huh. I don't know if this is as annoying to you as it is to me, but it's super annoying. Anyway, trying to find the titles of the grades. Anyway, for each initiation you go through, you get a different title. And I wanted to find those because when you get to the Magus, one of the things that you do as a Magus is you speak your word. And that was where this whole phrase, the word of the Magus was joy, came from. When I got to that point in my initiations, and it was like sort of when you go into the Tifereth initiation, if I remember right, it's when you cross into the sun, you get through this point where you... where you are supposed to receive this word that embodies your main message or of your life, you know. So for Crowley, when you hear them talk about Thelema, his word was Thelema, which meant will, which was 93, which was also the number of love. So he was like, it's both will and love, ha ha ha. You know, and that's why they talk about all that stuff, that love is a law and love under will. It's because it's all 93, right? So anyway, I was immersed in this mythology of the Golden Dawn when I grew up as a magician. You know, I blame Donald Michael Craig. when I got into the occult, I read Donald Michael Craig's stuff. It was Golden Dawn derived. I adopted this ceremonial magical approach to things. It served me well. I'm not going to lie. I had a really good experience as a magician, but eventually I had to leave the framework of that and go back before 1899 because basically everything after 1899 is crap in the occult, and it's sad. But it's true. Even my stuff, which came after 1899, which sadly enough, is it's crap. It's derivative. You know, it's my perspective on things. I think I'm managing to capture a snapshot that's relevant for people with my particular background or a similar one, and I think it's relevant for people who are called to this kind of thing. But it's not. It's not the pureness of it. You know, I think that I'm a voice along the way repeating some important things, but the framework that I work from is based on 16th century magic, because that's when it was good. You know, that's when that was the last time we put it all together into one complete framework as a hopeful group of people. You know, the Europeans that were living during the Enlightenment were hopeful for the first time after a really dark time in their history, and the philosophies of the time showed it. The embrace of science showed this hope for being saved from the oppression that was religious authoritarianism, right? So oh my God, this is bothering me so much. I should read the comments because someone's probably telling me. Bina, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Number 2 is Bina. Saturn. I knew it was Saturn. I was like, why can't I say it's Saturn? Because I didn't want to say it was Saturn because I was thinking Saturn was 3. Why was I thinking Saturn's 3? Because it goes Kether, Hokmah, Bina, and then Jupiter, right? Tzedek. It's Chesed. Yeah, right? So I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, 2 should be... Anyway. This is really bothering me. Erg. Huh. I should just ask fucking Google what it is. Anyway, I won't do that to you. All right, I'll just drop it. So anyway, when you get to the Magus, you become you're supposed to get the word that represents your purpose, your mission, right? So my word that I received when I went through all the different initiations, and I went through the planetary initiations, and I was mapping it to the different levels that the Golden Dawn said I was supposed to go through. And my experiences mapped almost exactly to what they were supposed to, almost as if I had programmed myself to expect it, and then I got everything I expected as I accomplished it. You know, it's funny the games that we play with ourselves, but it's how I learned, so I'm not going to knock myself too much about it. But I don't think it was as necessary as I thought it was at the time. To the spheres titles like Magister Templi, yes, exactly, Magister Templi, the Ipsissimus, the Magus, those titles, the titles of the people. Yeah, James, that's exactly who I was trying to think of. I can't remember. Anyway, the Magus is the one that like it goes like Dominus Luminous, and then whatever. Anyway, it's that one. But when you reach the Magus, it's supposed to be like after it's before you reach Ipsissimus, and it's supposed to be like where you crystallize your essence. And I felt like I had reached that point, and my word was joy. And it was because I had just left a really terrible relationship, and I was free for the first time in my life from a bunch of oppressive thoughts that had kept me trapped with this person. You know, like I thought that I was obligated to stay with them because of X, Y, and Z, and it turned out that those were all things that were in my head, right? So I was free from all these bars and prisons that I had been stuck in that were keeping me miserable, and I realized that I had been the source of my misery the whole time. So I found joy when I was freed from my prison through my magical initiations, right? So I was going through these magical initiations, and that relationship fell apart, right? I mean, it fell all to pieces because it was so false. It was so wrong. It never should have been. And it was so discordant with the truth. And the closer I got to the truth, the better I was at resonating with authenticity. And that authenticity was so toxic to the toxicity that I was living in, because the only cure for a toxic environment is to beam the light of truth on it, right? And the light of truth is pure, and falsehood cannot exist in the presence of purity. So, anyway, the release of endorphins that I felt when I was able to access my true authentic power as a magician, and I was using the whole Hermetic path, and I'm not talking about some kind of hokey power or whatever. I'm talking about let me see, I've got this one at least, I know. I'm talking about this right here, the Emerald Tablet, where it talks about going up through the spheres. So this is what the Emerald Tablet teaches, and this is what I was doing. I was rising through the spheres, and I was returning in power, and I was following this pattern based on the tree of life and all that stuff. So I wasn't I wasn't asking for the magic to produce for me anything that wasn't supposed to happen. You know what I mean? I'm not like saying I wasn't like trying to do fireballs or attain enlightenment, because like enlightenment is not what occultism is about. I talk about being enlightened because it's something that the post 1899 Golden Dawn friggin' magicians married into our thought processes, and like it's what I grew up with as a magician. In the 1990s I was learning all this stuff about the occult from people like Robert Anton Wilson, who equated the attainment of the Golden Dawn and the Rosicrucian movement with illumination, which was the Western version of enlightenment, right? And I think I still believe that's a very a resonant concept, right? I think it's very similar in ideals or ideologies, but I think they're both wrong. I don't think that the actual experience of illumination that Robert Anton Wilson was talking about and what enlightenment is are two separate things. I don't think that they're the same result from the path. I don't think that modern people understand what enlightenment is, especially people like me, white people from the West. We don't get it. And when I say West, I'm talking about the same West that Putin is talking about when he's talking about the West, Europe and America, mostly North America, mostly the United States, not Canada or Mexico. Yeah. So I was doing these initiations and rising through the spheres and returning in power, and it really worked. It really does work that way, But it's not illumination. It's not enlightenment that you come back with. It's a different kind of understanding of things. Okay, and when you understand things differently, like you have this aha moment. It's a eureka moment, and in that eureka moment, you're like, oh my God, I get it all, and in that burst of that moment, you have what I was trying to show you earlier. There's another stupid ad. The visions of it that it was showing earlier were like those little bursts of insights that you have, those bursts of understanding, right? And it's like you see that the universe is it's like it's got this aspect of it that is a magical Sorry, I just saw cocaine and got totally derailed. Oh yes, cocaine. Oh, here's the powers. Okay. So anyway, here's the visions, right? So as you're going through these initiations, you have these understandings, and when you do, you have these aha moments, and the eureka moments come along with these little visions that they talk about up here. The vision of the Holy Guardian Angel, the vision of the Machine of the Universe, the splendor, beauty, harmony of things, the vision of power, the vision of love. All those things. Vision of God face to face, the vision of antinomies, and in union with God, right? Those are all these things that you really can experience if you're doing these conjurations of the archangels of these spheres and asking for these visions. You can have these mystical experiences that result in these aha moments that are pure endorphins, right? So there's that mystical path to joy, and that's what I had achieved, right? So as I was going through these initiations, I was getting empowered, I was having these visions, my life was transformed because I was taking action based on my information, right? So as I would go through these processes of initiations, and this took like years, this was not something overnight, this was like, I want to say between like 2006 and 2012, I went through a period of multiple multi-layered initiations that culminated with the creation of what is now my conjuration rite. The publication of the Seven Spheres came out, and that was right when I first understood how this all worked. I just started finishing my initiations. I went into a dark night of the soul after that for a while, got a little distracted by things. Just because you understand and achieve things doesn't mean you're immune to making bad decisions, that's for sure. But, got things back on track and continued this process of transformation, right? So the thing is that moment of insight, I understood that at the essence of everything was this feeling of joy that is mirrored in that ecstatic release of endorphins, of dopamine and endorphins in your brain. And it's very much just a biochemical experience that I'm pointing to as a representation of it. But what it symbolizes is success, is joy, is the essence of positive, the best part of incarnating, right? The best part of our incarnation that we're ever going to experience is that moment of positive brain chemical release, as long as we're in this brain experience thing, right? And that's how you know that you're it's like your reward mechanism, right? It's how you let yourself know that you're doing it right, and it's not always like that. I mean, it can be released from bad things too. It's a weird, fucked up world. Everything's not perfect. I'm not saying that. But as you go along, when you're pursuing your occult stuff and your magical stuff, the mystical side of this endorphin technique thing is that when you do all these rituals of attainment and initiation, you get these little visions along the way that release these brain chemicals that are there's even some DMT involved. There's like some serious natural releases of these chemicals that create euphoric sensations and a euphoric understanding of things. Okay. And this euphoria is not delusional. All right. Here's the thing about all this. It's not, it doesn't take the place of sorrow, and it doesn't eliminate suffering, and it doesn't ignore suffering. Okay. But in addition to suffering, it recognizes that there's also joy in this world. Okay. And the thing is you can have both. All right, without taking away from either one. Okay, you can have suffering in Gaza that is horrible and the absolute joy of holding your grandkid, right, for the first time. Those two things can coexist on the same world because they really do. They really do coexist. You can't argue with that. You can't pretend that just because there's horrible things happening that there isn't also good. So what makes the appropriate response? You worry about what's in front of you right now. That's what you worry about. You worry about the things you can change. And you always are fighting against the horrible things that are going on. You always fight against the evils every chance you get. But at the same time, you also always celebrate your joy every chance you get. At the same time, you're not ignoring your obligations when you embrace your joy. Okay, that's a myth. That's a lie. That's right out of the pits of hell. Okay, so anyway, I want to talk a little bit more about like how we can continually pursue that ecstatic feeling, because once you've been through these initiations and stuff, you've got these ecstatic, amazing, drug-like trance experiences that transform your perceptions on things and bring you into harmony with the universe. The whole where's my Harmony of the Spheres video? Wonk, 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 right? So like you're all like absolutely in tune with things, right? Well, hopefully. Ideally, I mean, not that I am by any means, but things get better, right? And yeah. So anyway, when you get into this kind of thing, one of the things that you can find yourself doing is taking it for granted. You forget that you're a magician. You forget that you're powerful. You get wrapped up in your day-to-day stuff again. It's always a sine wave. There's peaks and there's troughs. You're riding high some of the time and you're riding real low other times. Especially if you've got like mental illness problems like I do. Every season I'm going to have high highs, I'm going to have low lows, and my whole therapy and my medication plan and now my daily practice and the sound healing technique stuff that my wife has been doing for me, there's a different approach to things that results in me keeping my waves at like kind of like low and slow and long, so I'm still got highs and I still got lows, but they're not overwhelming and they're not unforeseeable, you know what I mean? So it's like, and they're sort of almost intentional because I'm in tune with it, right? Because I'm not surprised by it. It's almost as if I expected it, almost as if I wanted it. So it's kind of like being vibing, I guess, with your own circadian rhythm, your own rhythm, your own personal cycle, But anyway, getting in tune with yourself, that goes back to the whole, what is the point of our thing that we're doing here? Where did that go? This one, haha. Right? So, whosoever therefore shall know themselves shall know all things in themselves. Right? So once you understand your own harmonies and the harmonies of the universe and your own powers, right? The Corpus Hermeticum teaches that we received a portion of the 7 powers as we descended towards our incarnation moment. Once you go through these 7 sphere initiations and you've tapped into those powers, you start to find these powers are in your life and they're in your day-to-day experiences. But it's easy to forget about those kind of things. I don't know why. It's so easy to forget about those kind of things. Every day I've been doing mantra, and that helps me stay attuned with it, and it helps me stay aware of what day it is, what planetary day it is, which reminds me of what the powers of the day are, which reminds me of what my abilities to interact with the reality are. So every day I have this thing that I've got going for me that reminds me of what I'm supposed to be doing. That's managed to put me into a cycle now. It's pretty cool. I like that. I didn't expect that when I started doing mantra, but I'm happy that I'm doing it. I guess it's not mantra, it's chant. But yeah. So what was my point with all that? Hey everybody. Divine peace and yes, hey Rufus and people, hey D. Yeah, I have a note here about ADHD people, and here I am being ADHD. Yeah, So anyway, you find your joy as a magician in your power as a magician is what I'm trying to get to here, right? So the way to remind yourself that you're of your power as a magician is to do magic, right? And to pursue your power as a magician. Now, I'm going to get into some stuff here. I'm just going to lift it straight out of some stuff that I grew up with. So I grew up as a charismatic Christian. The word that I got for as a magician, like, the Greek word that Crowley got was thelema for will, right? My Greek word was chara, right? It means joy, right? Chara it shares the same root, char, with charisma, right? Which is the gifts of the Holy Spirit. I was raised as a charismatic Christian, right? So a charismatic Christian believes that the Holy Spirit is active and present in the daily life, and that the gifts of the Holy Spirit that were given to the New Testament believers are present and active in the lives of modern Christians. We were the magicians of modern Christianity. We were the crazy, we were like the fringe, starts with evangelicals, right? The fringe evangelical charismatics believe that we have the power to do miracles, right? And the power is, let me go back to the top of the Bible over here. The powers of the Holy Spirit that I grew up believing that we had are these. Different ways of working, right? So it's basically, it's laid out in Corinthians in the New Testament of what the powers are of a magician. Now, when you think about looking at the Bible for inspiration about magic, it's a ridiculous concept until you start reading the Greek magical papyri. Now, the Greek magical papyri were they were contemporary with the writings of the New Testament, okay, and they were the handbooks of the street magicians, and the street magicians had all these familiar spirits, and they were the competition against Jesus and the disciples. So when Jesus was going around casting out demons, that was not a rare thing, and it wasn't just Jesus that was doing that. And you can read in the histories of the time that it was commonplace for the Gnostics and the Magus, the Magians, the people who wrote the Greek magical papyri, the magical people from Egypt and the melting pot of Rome. Were all mingled together in Judea, and they were casting out demons, and they were competing for the coins of the wealthy. The demons they were casting out were the symptoms of mental illness. To this day, the magic of the time that Jesus was accused of doing, that Jesus was competing with the magicians of his day and age with, was the casting out of the symptoms of mental illness as if they were demons. All right, you got to understand this. Like, when people get mad at me about magic is not about mental illness, the fuck it isn't. It's always been about casting out the evils of our symptoms, working with invisible forces to overcome the darknesses that defeat us. And those darknesses are 99% of the time coming from inside. Because you're an adult now. Nobody else is making those choices for you often. There's shit we have to put up with. But, magic is a way to get a hold of those demons and cast them out of you, all right? Your mental illness problems. People were mute. They couldn't speak. It was autism. Nonverbal. Extreme autistic. They were having fits and seizures. They were mentally ill. Okay, they were speaking in foreign tongues. So, they were seeing visions. They were talking to people that weren't there. They had to be tied up. They were psychotic. They were mentally ill. The magicians of the time were getting paid to treat the wealthy's children who were mentally ill. Okay? That's like historic facts. I mean, I'm interpreting here, but I think it's pretty freaking clear. Anyway, so point is, when you think about the Greek magical papyri as being contemporaneous with the Bible and being competition, right? So it is a competition for belief. It's a competition for coins. It's a competition for gigs, right? At jobs to do casting out of spirits, to do psychotherapy in the streets with the spit in the dirt, because that's the way they did things. Who gets to do the mumbo jumbo that makes that has the right rhythm and the interaction to interact with somebody who's able to interact with that, to give them a little bit moment of peace. Who's able to communicate with somebody who's incommunicative in a way that's meaningful enough to bring them peace and not be having a schizophrenic attack in the moment, Like when I was at a party once, and this guy was doing a bunch of nitrous oxide and some other drugs, and this guy had just gotten initiated into the Masonic Lodge, and he was wearing his kilt with this thing, and it was like this frat boy party in college, and it was this really young Mason guy, and this other guy, this friend of mine, was like, he was from the streets, we were from this hippie commune, and we'd gone to this frat party. It was not a good mix, but we went anyway, and this guy was doing a lot of nitrous, and he sees the guy from the Masonic Lodge wearing the kilt, and he goes, "Masonic Messiah," and he stands up and he starts spinning in circles, having a big moment, where revelation, where the big, eye in the sky, where is it? Pull this up here, might as well. The big eye in the sky was revealing itself to him in ways that he wasn't ready to receive, and he had the big vision of the Masonic Messiah, and he's spinning around, and he falls down, breaks the furniture, and he stands up, and he's looking around crazy, and I realized, dude needed some help. So I stepped forward, and I was able to connect with him, because, he and I we weren't friends, but I knew where he was coming from. And in that moment, I was like able to bridge his psychotic break back to reality by giving him an anchor point. And I just kind of connected my consciousness with him. And I knew how to do it because I'd done acid before. And I knew that he was like kind of just out there, and he needed to connect with someone, and I connected with him on a psychic level and drew him back down. And everybody at the party there, I felt like people should know how to do that, and I guess that's not something people know how to do. So that's the kind of thing that people had the power to do back then, some of us, and those kind of people were able to make a living connecting with people who were outside of the normal level of consciousness. All right. As occultists, we're able to develop higher levels of sensitivity to connect with people who are operating on multiple dimensions. They're operating in levels that aren't entirely 100% here. When we are able to cast spirits out, and sometimes we are able to cast spirits out, we're able to bring clarity back to someone and connect them back to this world. We're healers that way. We bridge the things, But anyway, the powers of a magician are what bring us joy. When we do those magical things that we've developed the powers and the skills to do, it sparks our little brains with the dopamine results, and it takes the place of the visions, the big visions and the big insights, like after the initiation, then what? Chop wood, carry water, But it's not just chop wood, carry water. It's, heal the sick and raise the dead and bring light to the dark and healing to the blind. So anyway, that's why when I bring up things like this and say that the powers of the Holy Spirit are a good way to understand what our powers are magician. What I'm talking about is this phrase here that comes from Corinthians, and Corinth was a big fucking city that had a lot of money to be made for street magicians and pastors and people who were peddling such tripe as Christianity and the other types of stuff that was going around. I really don't understand how Orphism fucking lost to Christianity. Orphism is cool, all right? It explains how everything works, and there's no guilt, there's no blame, and there's no fake crap. You know, it's you know what it is Orphism makes you have to deal with your own crap. Christianity teaches that you don't have to deal with your crap. Jesus did already, and you can still be an asshole. You know, that's the difference. You know, with Orphism, you have to know yourself so that you can understand how to not be a jackass anymore. With Christianity, it's that they don't give a shit. Don't bother learning anything about yourself. Just, you're going to heaven, you're fine. Go be a dick. Whatever. Ask me what I think about Christianity sometime. I'm not like, you know, everybody's on their own path. I'm not gonna like go off about how evil anybody is or anything, but I think that there are better ways to be. I think that Orphism is a better approach to understanding our relationship with deity than Christianity was, at least for me, as a human being. However, Christianity did leave an imprint on me, and one of the things I learned growing up was how to do magic. All right, but the way I learned it was with these kinds of words. So it says in Corinthians. So Corinth was a Greek town where the Christians were in competition with the Magians and the Ethiopians and the Egyptians. Northern Egyptians who were teaching magic, like Simon the magician is where we get the word simony from. He's the one that tried to buy the initiation from Peter that was allowing him to cast out demons so well. And Peter's like, "Oh, you're so dumb," whatever. Anyway. It's important to remember that the Greek magical papyri include references to Jesus. Just so you know, Jesus didn't give a shit. His name was used by Greek magical papyri magicians just like it was Christians. Not as much, though. Hermes, I think, was more effective. But it was political at the end of the day. It was Rome. Rome sided with Christians for political reasons, for entirely just so it could control its population. And it was entirely a mental game, you know. That's why Orphism lost. Orphism raised up the individual, whereas Christianity put the individual on a level of guiltlessness, but at the same time complete subservience to a patriarchal society, you know, where they were controlled by guilt and taught to be cogs in a machine, you know. It's revolting, I say. But coming from that background, like I said, I learned how to do some magic things. So what the Bible called, let's see, the message of wisdom. So these are the gifts: the message of wisdom, the message of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit, faith, right? So wisdom, knowledge, faith, healing, working of miracles, prophecy, distinguishing between spirits, speaking in various tongues, and the interpretation of tongues. Okay, so if you know your talismans, the speaking of tongues and interpretation of tongues is the aleatory of Mercury, right? That's for students and diplomats. It helps you understand the language of your people that you're around. That's two of the powers of the Holy Spirit. Let's see. distinguishing between spirits within the talismans. Each of the spirits of the planets gives you control over one of the planetary spirits. Again, this is a spiritual tool. If you look at the Lemegeton, it has a list of all these spirits with their properties. If you look at the Key of Solomon, the Testament of Solomon was around 200 AD that it was first written, I believe. That was one of the texts that was being circulated at the time of the Bible, at the time of the Greek magical papyri. This idea of being able to distinguish between spirits and identify which was which is how basically how the Testament of Solomon was able to say that this was the demon that Solomon used to build the temple, and this was the angel that it used to control it, right? So that whole idea of controlling angels and all that stuff, that was from this power of being able to distinguish spirits, right? So these are all related. These are all interrelated reflections of this idea of how magic worked. Okay, so when I refer to this list from Corinthians, it's a list of spiritual powers that was contemporary to the powers of the magicians that we can learn a lot from if we ditch a lot of the ceremonial magic upbringing that I, for one, imprinted on in my early days as a magician. All right, so where was I? Okay, so those are the different types of powers that we have access to within our tradition. Okay, so the Orphic mysteries taught that we were able to access these powers by harmonizing ourselves with that sphere, that resonance. Okay, when we go through this initiation, like I have an initiation script for each of the 7 planets, when you go through that, you resonate with the sphere, you create that vibration in your life, right, that draws that that power into being, right? And it raises the tincture of your sphere, right? That resonance results in a difference, right? That isn't necessarily something that you can put into words. Okay, that change, that transformation makes you more yourself, right? It's more clearly you. You're more like what you used to be, but when you were that, you were also afraid, or you were reacting to something that had happened that was already over that you were still experiencing, right? So like if you deal with your trauma as you go through these initiations and you come out of it and you're like able to progress forward, you're not going to be recreating the same things over and over again anymore, right? But you're still the same person, you know? You're more you. You're just not, your energy hasn't been sucked away by something else, and you're able to express it now in your life in new ways, right? So that's where this resonance, what it results in is things like where it talks about the message of wisdom or the message of knowledge or faith, right? These are all ideas. These are all concepts almost, right? But when you go through these initiations, you find yourself knowing things differently. You understand how things came into being in a planetary way according to the chain of manifestation, because you've trained yourself to interpret things through that lens. And as you do that and you integrate that into your perception, you're able to understand things about a situation in a different way that gives you a different gestalt, a different snapshot of the understanding of this experience, right? And if you're doing like things like this daily mantra where you're connecting to this universal subconscious mind that has manifested itself as you and everybody else that's still connected, and our experience as this all thing, and you're able to also take to that framework this initiatory understanding that has plugged you into the manifestation of everything through the 7-sphered lens of existence. You know, you're able to experience your day-to-day life from a point of understanding that results in things like what looks like a message of knowledge, right? It looks like you know something that you shouldn't know. You have a wisdom that you shouldn't necessarily have, okay? A lot of us have gone through experiences in our lives, or even some of us were just born, where, you know, you meet somebody and you're like 4 years old and they're like, oh, what an old soul, you know? And it's like, yeah, I was I was harmed. Sorry, you know. But even before that, you know, there's this recognition of something ancient about people, you know, that some people have. Those people, in my opinion, are manifesting in their lives with a continuation of previous initiations into the spheres. Initiations like, when I die, I think what is my consciousness is going to go on to a new incarnation, taking with it the best of my experiences now, plus the ones that I think are also cool, and incarnating around those ideas, right? Yeah. So another one of the gifts is healing, right? The ability to heal people. If you go through the initiations of Venus and the Sun and Mars to a degree, actually all of them in different ways, it will teach you how to bring healing into other people's lives, right? And I'm not talking about just spiritual, emotional, whatever. I mean, the number of people that go through actually having to do exorcisms when they do their initiation paths is ridiculously high. Okay, I'm sorry, it's lame in my opinion that we should still have to do exorcisms, but I've done 2, I think, altogether that were like real for real, like where I felt like I had to put on robes and use my initiatory experiences as a priest to do the banishing of spiritual stuff, you know. And at the time it made sense. Yeah, but for the most part, I think that is a very extreme form of our practices as magicians. You know, I think most of what we do when we bring healing to other people is more along the lines of dealing with the other kind of demons, like kind of helping people get past the problems that are keeping them from dealing with the real problems they have in their life. You know, like if you lately I've been blessing people with or trying to bring wealth and prosperity to people who don't otherwise seem to have it, you know. I did an experiment with some homeless people where I was blessing a certain segment of our population, and but I saw it was interesting. There's different ideas of what prosperity are, and there's a homeless prosperity that's different than a housed prosperity, that's for sure. And it's not necessarily what you and I might think of as prosperous. So interesting to remember that people are all free to do what they want to do. All right, so anyway, those are the powers that I wanted to talk about, but mostly what I wanted to talk about is using your powers to bless people and to change lives, you know, to find your moments of joy. One of the things that we learned magic to do was to do miraculous things, right? Like seeing weird shit happen, you know, and that's the joy that we get to experience in this life. You know, and when you are actively pursuing those kinds of experiences by setting yourself up for them, and there are day-to-day experiences where you can use your magic to change the world, okay, and these are the kind of things that we can do as magicians. What we end up doing is we create, even in our little moments where we're, even if it's just like a prosper rite for ourselves or our family. You know, if it's just like you want to see your niece or nephew do well at school or whatever, You know, even if it's just something as simple and selfish or what seemingly inconsequential as that, right? It creates a resonance, right? And what we end up doing is we all create a harmonic that creates a different kind of change in this world. All right. And what true joy we have, according to the Corpus Hermeticum, is not to be found in the small pursuits. Last week, I think I talked a little bit about how true wealth isn't found in money, right? True wealth is found in the joyful experience of your life, right? That's what the money is representative to you. In some way, the money represents being free to have fun in this aspect of my life. I think this would bring me joy and money would bring me that. So I can do, you know, but real joy comes from having this, a positive life that you've created benefit yourself and others, right? That's where my joy comes from. That's where I see it the most. And when I see like the things that I teach about magic helping other people, that's one level of success for me that I think is awesome. That's one of the reasons I do this for free these days, mostly for free. But then my personal wealth, my kids' business kicking off, my kids' happiness, my kids coming through some dark times, you know, those kind of cool things. My wife going through her process of transformation as a healer, going into a new phase of her life as with sound healing, you know, everything that, you know, even my dog has gone through an incredible well, her own little transformation of things, you know. Every part of my life has continued to improve across the board for like the last 5 years or so, and it hasn't always been positive. I've had some rough spots that I had to work through. You know, I've had dark things revealed about myself that I still have to deal with, and it sucks. You know, honestly, it sucks. There's a part of life that's awful. You know, and I hate it. I hate it when I see it. I hate it, and I don't like it, and I fight against it because it's wrong. It's wrong to leave it there. You know, if you see garbage, you pick it up. You don't leave it there. It's not rocket science. You know, and as magicians, we have bigger, you know, those little claw things. You don't even have to touch the garbage yourself anymore. You can pick up those little hand things and throw it in the garbage with a little extendable. You don't even have to bend over, right? We're magicians here. We have spirits to do our dirty work for us, you know. Anyway, we can clean up the world, and that's where our joy comes from. That's where the ecstasies of our magic come from, you know. Here, I wanted to show you this too. No, maybe. This. So this is, it's here twice. Sorry, this is, ever get around to printing up pamphlets. I have a pamphlet ready for my papering of Hermes on people's doors. Anyway, this is my hymn to Hermes. But Maidos Huius, son of Maya, teaches the mystery of ecstasy. The mystery of ecstasy that I learned as a Hermetic magician, this comes from the Corpus Hermeticum for me. All right, the Corpus Hermeticum has like, it talks about how human beings descended from the highest to our incarnation, right? And we received a portion of blah, blah, blah along the way, right? And then it talks about after we incarnate, we forget about having our powers, and that there's a way back to receiving that if we become pious people. That's the only like active thing that it suggests you do is to remember who you are, right? To know yourself. To know yourself, right? So once you remember who you are, you go through these initiations, you reclaim your powers, then you have a pious life. How do you have a pious life? You pursue God. And how does that look in real life? You create something, right? We are made in the image of this creator God who spoke this world into being according to the Corpus Hermeticum. All right, so what are we doing once we are incarnated fully and reminded of everything that we do as magicians, as incarnated human beings? We create with our words, with the powers of our cohorts, our 7 co-workers, and in creating our desires for the good of ourselves and others, for our own joy, right? When we start doing that, we find more fulfillment, because that's the true embodiment of all of this whatever, this teaching, this mystery tradition thing. The point of understanding Zeus the head, Zeus the middle, Zeus the all in all, the point of using that in our rituals to conjure the source of everything and all of our brothers and sisters that are also manifesting, is to recognize our role in this process as magicians. Because when you're actively magicking your life into being as a magician, you're going to have this pure, unadulterated, raw connection to the force of creation itself, because you're connected to it. You're the conduit of the generation of experience, your own and the people around you. That's the source of our joy as magicians, right? And does that take the place of the sorrows of this world? No, it does not. No, it does not. But it gives us a tool of light and of power that we can use against the darkness, right? So anyway, that's all I got for today. Have a great afternoon, and yeah, hope you find your joy too, because it's important to have joy. It's important to pursue that, especially in times of dark times. All right, take care. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Can I ask a question about planetary magic in your tradition? Yeah, go ahead. Caribbean Grimoire, are you still? If you're still there, do please go ahead and ask a question. Hey, Julian, I did not forget about you, by the way, but I did kind of forget about you. I didn't get the thing done in time, so that's why I didn't reach out to you, by the way. Thanks. I love this one too. But yeah, I probably will not have time to get it to you by the time you're asking. All right, I don't think Caribbean Grimoire is going to ask. Caribbean Grimoire, if you have a question about it, oh, there it is. Working with this magical system of the planets this way, can it give you access to working off your stored karma in the 7 spheres? Yeah, absolutely, right? Absolutely, I think it does. I think those are 2 different systems. I don't think planetary karma is a real thing. And if you understand karma from a Eastern perspective, it's not planetary, I don't think. But the equivalent, yeah, that's basically what I think dealing with the shadow work is that we're doing when we're cleaning off the lens of whatever it is, without appropriating too much of their actual belief systems and being a dickhead about it. But yeah, I mean, basically, I do believe that that's what we're doing, is we're cleaning off whatever corruption we've got related to that sphere, whether from ourselves or other people. So, yeah, I think you did. Yeah, but that's basically what the initiations are for, is to work off whatever stored karma, quote unquote, you might have, or whatever the metric equivalent is on our system. So, all right, I'm gonna let you go. I've got to get over to my day job.